today's episode, I'm going to share with you some questions that people give me regularly about how I became an English teacher and why I teach the way I do. I think you're going to find it very interesting. Let's get started.
So tell us a bit about how you became an English teacher.
Well, actually, I became an English teacher by accident. A friend of mine called me on a Thursday and said, "Hey, Herbert, we've got a bit of an emergency. One of our teachers from your country, from Canada, got on the plane last night and went home without telling us. We have a problem because he was supposed to give us a class on Monday. Now we don't have a teacher. We're wondering if you can help us out and teach that class." So I said, "Sure, I'm happy to do it. Only under one condition. Do you have a book that you're using for that course?" And they said, "No, you can do what you like." I said, "I'll take the course." So I took that course. It was an 8-week course, and I was able to use materials and ideas that I had been developing for a long time for those students. And when the evaluation came back, the students said, "We like how he teaches. It's different than everyone else, but we learned something. Can he do more for us?" So that's how I started my career as an English teacher, purely by accident.
And how did you develop your current thinking, and how did you develop your course?
Well, again, I was very lucky because after I did that first course, they said, "Would you like to develop new courses for us? You can do whatever you like." And that made me really happy because I didn't want to teach traditionally, just take a book, read the material, have the students study, because I realized that wasn't effective. A lot of the students I was teaching had been studying English for 10, 15, even 20 years, but they still couldn't speak properly. And all of them said to me, they want to learn how to speak and communicate in English, not just grammar and pronunciation and all that, which they had studied for so long and still couldn't speak. So I decided I'd better do some homework. So for 2 months I researched learning materials, learning methodologies, and finally I came up with a course called Perfect Grammar Workshop. And in that course there was a lot of activity, a lot of games, a lot of interaction, and things that are not in traditional classroom teaching. But the students loved it, and they all wrote that they wanted more courses. So I developed more courses: power pronunciation, power speaking, conversation, power presentation, about 6 or 7 courses altogether. And we kept running those courses every year. Every 2 months we would run a different course. And it was always oversubscribed because the students were telling all their friends and they were getting good results.
You have been a Toastmaster for over 40 years. How has that affected how you teach?
Well, Toastmasters is very dear to me. I've been a Toastmaster since I lived in Canada in 1980. And one of the things I noticed in Toastmasters was that people who couldn't speak, not just in a big group, but speak generally, were able to improve their conversation and communication skills very quickly because they were able to use it. And most people think Toastmasters is just about public speaking, but what Toastmasters does is it helps you organize your thoughts so that you can speak better. It teaches you to limit your time so you don't become a chatterbox. We have a timer at every meeting. They time your speech. And so that creates more discipline. And when you have discipline, you can really become a much better speaker, whether you're speaking to a small group or whether you're speaking just one-on-one with someone having coffee or with a small group of friends at a dinner party. So all the skills that you learn in Toastmasters can transfer very easily to your everyday conversation. Also, I found that your level of English didn't matter when you joined Toastmasters. I've seen Toastmasters whose English was very basic, and I've also seen university professors who took Toastmasters training. They all benefited. So this was a very interesting finding for me, that level of English didn't really matter. It was just a matter that you needed to develop the skills at whatever level you are. So when I develop courses, I base it on that idea that I'm transferring the skills, and it doesn't really matter what level of English you're at.
During COVID, many classes, including English classes, were stopped. How did that affect you?
Well, like everybody else, I had to stay at home. And because when you're a teacher, you're still thinking about teaching. And so it made me think, how can I teach people during a period like this when everybody's at home? And of course, many places went to remote. So there's a lot of remote classes. But a lot of the classes were not very effective because the teacher who was teaching online just tried to teach the way they normally do. And you can't do that. You can't just take the book and the material and transfer it online and say, this is an online course. It really doesn't work that way. There's a lot of skill and a different way of thinking if you want to teach online. So I spent quite a bit of time learning about how to teach online so that it's effective. And it also made me think that how could I expand how many people I teach at once? Because I realized even before COVID, there's a lot of people that don't have access to English learning. And so how could I create materials, that would help more people who not only had no access to English courses, but no access to any kind of coaching or mentoring or anything like that. How could I really help more people who needed it?
So what happened to everyone who wanted to study English at that time?
So I know here in Macau, a lot of people, I was getting a lot of calls and they were saying, are you going to start your classes again very soon? And I said, well, like everybody, we have to wait until COVID is over before we can start any classes. So they were quite disappointed. But it made me also think that how dependent we had become on the idea of going to class to learn something, when in the case of COVID, we had to rely on ourselves to learn. And it made me think about what is teaching and what is learning. And I think a lot of people depend on having a teacher. And yet, you know, to learn a language like English, it's much more effective to learn by yourself. But it's more challenging because sometimes you don't have the guidance and the direction of what to learn, how long to learn, how much to learn, what materials to learn. So you still need some guidance. So the role of a teacher, I think, changes over time. And the role of the teacher should be more like a coach or a guidance counselor. He steers you on a certain path. I think that's the role that I'm taking on now.
Traditional teachers struggled to teach effectively online. So it must have been a struggle for anyone trying to study on their own. So what do you think about that?
So just as I was saying, I think when we had no choice during COVID, they had nothing to do, so they thought, maybe I can learn English on my own. And so they would try to get material here and material here, maybe watch some YouTube videos, and they kind of pick at these different pieces to try to learn something. And in many cases, it wasn't very successful because they didn't know what to look for. They didn't know what materials suited them. They didn't know how long they should study. They didn't realize that it's not like a class where you're going to have interaction with other people. But there are ways to overcome that. But most people were not able to find that during COVID. So I think for many people during COVID, even online classes were not very useful because some of the teaching wasn't very successful. The teachers really were not trained to teach people online. So that was kind of another failing. But the good thing about COVID, I think it helped people think, is there another way I can learn besides going to class?
After COVID, how did your thinking change? Did you have any new ideas about improving English learners' skills?
So for me, I was always thinking like the learner. I was not trying to think like the teacher. Traditionally, if you're the teacher, you think about the material and what you're going to teach, how long you're going to teach for. Me, I was always concerned with the learner and what results they were getting. And from my study during the COVID period, I realized that it could be done, that a person could actually learn English on their own, self-learning, but they needed guidance on what to learn, how long to learn for, and how to get into the real world and practice with a purpose. And that was really the fundamental change. And because of my health, I realized that I'm not going to be able to do live classes anymore. But it's kind of a waste of my knowledge if I don't teach people what I know, if I can really help them. And I know what I know can really help people to really learn and improve. So I have this mission to really get the message out that self-learning works if you work at it. And if you come back to this YouTube channel, I share a lot of ideas that can help you improve yourself.
You seem to really like the idea of self-study, but isn't it a big challenge to everyone who is used to traditional classroom learning?
Yes, it is quite challenging. But first, you got to look at the difference and advantages and disadvantages of traditional and self-study. So traditional learning is good because it forces you to go to a class. It forces you to take homework and do it. It allows you to have interaction with other students. But some of the disadvantages of classroom teaching are also there. For example, you may not be able to find a class that's suitable for you at that particular time. So if you want to study pronunciation, maybe you have to wait half a year. And maybe that class still won't be the right one for you because it's too simple or it's too difficult. So very difficult to find material or a class that's just right for you. And also the schedule may not be right for you. So all these things are sort of the negative point of traditional classrooms. On the other hand, self-study, you can choose your own schedule. You can find materials that's suitable for you. But that takes a special skill that you also need to learn. Self-study does work if you work at it. That's the key, learning to work at it. Many people try self-study, but it doesn't work for them because they don't have the discipline. They're like it's like New Year's resolutions or going to the gym. At the beginning of the year, you say you're going to do this. After a week, you say, well, maybe I won't do this. You start going to the gym. After 1 week, you're like, yeah, I can do it. After a week, not so interesting. You say maybe 3 times a week, and then maybe once a week, and then maybe once a month, and then you just keep paying the membership, and you don't go. So the discipline is one of the most important parts to self-study. The other thing is to have a real purpose. If you have a reason to study English, you want to go out with this charming girl and she doesn't speak your language, she only speaks English, I guarantee you will learn English very fast because you've got a good reason. So one of the things with study, self-study or classroom study or any study, you got to have a good reason why. Why do you want to study? If you have a good reason why, I guarantee you'll find the motivation and the discipline, and self-study is like everything else. You can do it.
I know that you have stopped teaching live classes because of your health. What are you doing now?
So right now I'm spending all my time producing YouTube videos because I think it's important for me to get my message out to people that, one, they can learn on their own with some guidance and some proper skills. And I'm now spending a bit more time developing some courses so that's a bit more structured. A lot of people need just a little bit more structure in their learning so they can really improve even faster. So that's what I'm doing with my time because I'm really committed to helping people learn to become better English speakers, better conversationalists, better communicators. I've seen the results of my teaching in person. I've seen how people who joined Toastmasters improved because of self-study, which basically Toastmasters is. And so really I'm excited and happy if more people can learn from what I know and really improve their English skills. That's my mission. That's my purpose.